For nearly 3 decades, the person behind the brutal murder of a 15-year-old girl found in a Montana river in 1996 remained a mystery. After a breakthrough using modern DNA testing, a suspect was identified and questioned, only to die by suicide the following day. Danielle Houchins of Belgrade, Montana, left her home about 11 a.m. on September 21, 1996. It was the last time Danielle was seen alive. When she didn't return, her family reported her missing. Houchins' truck was discovered by her mother at the Cameron Bridge fishing access in Bozeman on the Gallatin River. Later that night, Houchins' body was found face down in shallow water in the river. During the investigation, numerous suspects were interviewed and DNA evidence was collected from Houchins. But as the years went on, the case went cold. That is, until a significant breakthrough in the case last month in July 2024. DNA evidence collected at the time of her death was matched to 55-year-old Paul Hutchinson of Dillon, Montana, a married man with 2 adult children and no criminal or traffic history, officials said in a news release Thursday, August 8. On July 23, law enforcement interviewed Hutchinson for 2 hours, where he displayed extreme nervousness. He sweated profusely, scratched his face, and chewed on his hand. When he was shown a photo of Houchins, he slumped in his chair and exhibited signs of being uncomfortable, the release said. Around 4:15 a.m. the following morning, Hutchinson called the Beaverhead County Sheriff's Office, said he needed assistance, then hung up. Deputies found him shortly after on the side of the road, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, the sheriff's office said. Investigators said that Hutchinson and Houchins had no prior connection, and the 1996 murder is believed to be a crime of opportunity. Authorities believe Hutchinson and Houchins randomly encountered each other at the river, where Hutchinson raped then suffocated her in shallow water, the sheriff's office said. At the time of Houchins' death, Hutchinson was a Montana State University student. He later graduated in fisheries wildlife biology, started a family, and worked for the Montana Bureau of Land Management in Dillon for 22 years. Hutchinson was never connected to the case prior until the DNA results. The sheriff's office said the investigation emphasizes the importance of preserving evidence in order for future technologies to identify suspects. In the initial investigation in 1996, 4 hairs were collected from Houchins' body. In 2019, the sheriff's office renewed efforts to solve the case. Then, in 2021, the office hired private investigator Tom Elfmont, a retired Los Angeles Police Department officer with decades of experience. He was aided in the case by Sergeant Court Depweg from the Newport Beach Police Department, which specialized in solving homicides using DNA technology. The DNA collected from the crime was sent to the Astria Forensics in California for analysis, and a partial DNA profile from one of the hairs was developed. It was run through CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, but yielded no matches, the sheriff's office said. The profile was then sent to Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia, where genealogists used additional DNA databases to identify Hutchinson as the suspect, the release said. After Hutchinson's interview and subsequent suicide, we received confirmation that DNA evidence was a complete match to Paul Hutchinson, Sheriff Dan Springer said in a press conference Thursday. Springer said he knew that this day would come. The investigation remained open because we knew Danny was murdered, and someday we were going to have the tools available to solve this case, he said. This case exemplifies our relentless pursuit of justice. We never gave up on finding the truth for Danny and her family, exhausting all means necessary to bring closure to this heartbreaking chapter. Springer said Houchins' case is now closed, but an investigation into Hutchinson remains ongoing to assure he has no other victims. Houchins' younger sister, Stephanie Mollett, spoke at the press conference where she said, "After nearly 28 years without answers, without justice, we celebrate today." Even though this man will not face a jury of his peers, I have no doubt he was the one who forcefully and violently sexually assaulted my sister, then held her head down in a marsh until she choked to death on mud, she said. When the time came to face up and account for his violence, he instead chose to end his life. He knew of his guilt and couldn't face my family or his family and the pain he had caused. For her, the feelings are conflicted. Mollett also expressed anguish over the sheriff's offices and state crime lab's initial handling of the investigation back in 1996. Exactly 20 years after a teenage girl was sexually assaulted and brutally murdered in her Phoenix home, a suspect has been arrested in connection with the killing, authorities said. Officers identified Sergio Reyes, now 37, as a suspect in 2014, a decade after the murder. But he was living in Mexico at the time, police said. Investigators worked with the U.S. Marshals Service in the following years to locate and extradite Reyes. He was booked into Maricopa County Jail on Wednesday, July 10th, on charges stemming from the July 10, 2004 killing of 15-year-old Elena Lasswell. Reyes is being held on $1.5 million. On this day, 20 years ago, around 8 p.m. local time, officers responded to a home along North 21st Drive and were directed to a room where they found Lasswell, the release states. According to police, emergency life-saving measures were attempted, but she did not survive her injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. The release did not share any details regarding Lasswell's cause of death. The case was then turned over to homicide detectives, who were unable to identify any suspects, leading the case to turn cold. In 2012, investigators used DNA collection techniques and identified a profile that matched Reyes. By March 2013, the DNA evidence was processed, and police felt confident enough to identify Reyes as a primary suspect. Reyes was indicted by a Maricopa County grand jury in 2014, police said. Since he was living in Mexico at the time, authorities began the extradition process. With help from the U.S. Marshals Service, authorities were able to find and arrest Reyes on July 10, 2024. It's been 20 years to the day that 15-year-old Elena Lasswell was murdered inside her home, Phoenix Police Detective Dominic Roestenberg said. So it's a big day not only for the Phoenix Police Department, but more importantly, Elena's family. They've been waiting 20 years for justice. So, it took a while, but through perseverance, hard work, and dedication, we were able to get Sergio Reyes back to Phoenix to face charges, he concluded. Lasswell's aunt, Katie Tourville, stated that the family is glad an arrest has been made and that they never lost hope. Knowing that someone is being held responsible feels awesome, Tourville told the news outlet. It's been a long haul, and thank God for Phoenix PD. They have been absolutely amazing. I just really felt that they were on the right trail, and that they would get it. I just didn't know when. An Atlanta man has been charged with his wife's murder, 25 years after her body was found in multiple trash bags. In April and June 1999, human remains were found in separate locations in Atlanta, Georgia. On Thanksgiving Day, 1998, Melissa spoke with her mother, Norma Patton, on the phone. That was the last time anyone in her family heard from her. According to her sister, Tina Patton, as the holiday season continued, with no word from Melissa, the family started to grow concerned. Christina Garrett and her brother Joey were only toddlers when their mother, Melissa Wolfenbarger, was found brutally murdered after she had been missing for months. According to the Atlanta Police Department, the 21-year-old mother was found decapitated, dismembered, and stuffed into black trash bags in the spring of 1999. Not far from their home in Atlanta, Georgia, but it would be years before the remains were identified. Melissa Patton Wolfenbarger grew up outside of Atlanta, Georgia, with her parents and her sister, Tina Patton. In high school, she met and fell in love with Christopher Wolfenbarger. They later married, had 2 children, Christina and Joseph, and moved to a duplex in Atlanta. Tina said the last time their family spoke to Melissa was on Thanksgiving Day in 1998. She had a very specific request for a Christmas gift. She asked her mother, Norma Patton, for a photo of herself with her grandfather. "It's what she wanted for Christmas that year," Norma said. It was something very sentimental. But when Christmas arrived, there was no word from Melissa, and she did not show up to celebrate the holidays. Concerned, members of her family tried to reach her, but were unsuccessful. After the holidays, Melissa's parents decided to drive to Atlanta from their home in Locust Grove, Georgia, and check on her in person. Her mother, Norma, stated that when they arrived, the duplex on Brookline Avenue had been completely cleaned out, and a neighbor informed them that everything had been moved out during the week between Christmas and New Year's. Melissa's family became even more concerned when Norma's birthday came and went on February 24th, and still no word from Melissa. There was no call, no card, no visit, nothing. Norma said, "That just wasn't her. She was my baby girl, so I knew something was wrong." Sergeant Raymond Layton with the Atlanta Police Department has been on Melissa's case for years. He said that Melissa's husband, Christopher Wolfenbarger, never reported her missing. Instead, it was her mother, Norma, who filed the missing persons report in January 2000, after hitting several roadblocks. When Christopher Wolfenbarger was questioned by police, he told them Melissa had left on her own. He then refused to cooperate with the investigation, Sergeant Layton stated. The sergeant added that Wolfenbarger has an extensive criminal history with a history of family violence, and that witnesses stated during the investigation that he had been abusive to Melissa. Christopher Wolfenbarger insisted he had nothing to do with Melissa's death and wanted nothing more than to help with the investigation. "Yeah, I have a criminal history," Wolfenbarger stated, "but I'm not a murderer." He said Melissa's disappearance at the end of 1998 wasn't anything out of the ordinary. "We're not talking about one day she was there, and the next she was not," Wolfenbarger said. "I just figured she'd come back when she was able to." He explained that Melissa took on multiple shifts at the Waffle House to make extra money and would stay at a hotel instead of commuting home. Wolfenbarger added that she also had been creating fake IDs and social security cards with the goal of their family moving away and starting a new life in California. "I'm not denying I have criminal history," he said. "We were like Bonnie and Clyde, just small-time criminals, but we didn't do anything bad. We were just trying to build a better life in California. California was the dream." And when Melissa never returned home, he said he figured she changed her identity and went on to live her dream without him. "That's the reason I didn't report her missing," he said. "She wanted to get away from her parents and from this place. So she had to become someone else. I just thought she'd come back when things settled down." Chris and Melissa's daughter, Christina, stated the story her mother just leaving on her own is one she heard for years. After her mother disappeared, Christina's next memory was of living with her grandmother on her father's side in Locust Grove, Georgia. She added that her father was gone for a long time, and when he returned, she didn't even know who he was. "I called him Chris because that's what everyone called him," Christina said. "I didn't realize he was our father. I still don't really think of him as my father." Years later, when Christopher Wolfenbarger re-emerged in his children's lives, he told them their mother left their family and that he didn't know where she was. "I didn't know her, but she's my mom and I know she would have never walked out without us," Christina said. "I'm a mom now and I can't imagine doing that to my child." Back in 1999, Melissa had been missing 5 months when, on April 29, 1999, authorities with the Atlanta police found a severed human head in a black trash bag on Avon Avenue near Hartford Avenue, according to Sergeant Layton. The grisly discovery was made in close proximity to the glass company where her husband Christopher Wolfenbarger worked, and from which he was fired after the suspected theft of a reciprocal saw, Sergeant Layton said. When Christopher Wolfenbarger was questioned about the theft, he said the suspected theft was a misunderstanding and that he never stole anything from the company. He added that after he was fired, he moved out of the duplex and in with his uncle, while his kids went to live with his mother. On June 3, 1999, more dismembered human remains were found in black trash bags in a wooded area between Hartford Place and Avon Avenue. Sergeant Layton stated the remains found were legs, arms, and feet, but a torso was never found. "I think it demonstrates that the murder was well planned," Sergeant Layton said, "and that the killer had the equipment to dismember and transport her remains." At the time, the remains were unidentified. Melissa Wolfenbarger was still missing. But her mother Norma said she knew it was only a matter of time before the remains would be identified as her daughter. So she continued to watch the news every day for 4 years. "The fact that my baby girl was cut up just shows it was done by someone evil," she said. "No normal person is going to cut up a human body. It would take years before the remains found on Avon Avenue would be identified as Melissa." In 2003, Melissa and Tina's father, Carl Millard Patton Jr., was arrested and later convicted for the 1977 murders of Fred Wyatt, Liddy Matthews Evans, and Evans' boyfriend, Joe Cleveland. The case, known as the Flint River Murders, gained national media attention and brought greater attention to Melissa's case. The family stated it was Carl Patton Jr.'s case, and the testing of DNA that eventually led investigators to confirm the remains found in 1999 belonged to Melissa. Norma, who testified against her husband in 2003, said his arrest was what made it possible for someone to pay attention to Melissa's case. Sergeant Layton stated at the time that Melissa's husband Christopher is considered a person of interest in the case. An autopsy determined that Melissa's neck had been severed with a saw. He added that evidence was collected from her home on Brookline Avenue, but did not match other trace evidence collected from the scene, and no arrests have been made. Christopher Wolfenbarger stated he has always cooperated with the investigation and submitted his DNA years ago when requested by the detectives at the time. As for the remains being discovered in such close proximity to his job, Wolfenbarger stated the possible connection to him is absurd. Who in their right mind kills somebody and dumps the body at their job? It just doesn't make sense. Christina, who lived with her father for a short time while in her late teens, grew frustrated. "I'd ask my dad and he would tell me a different story every time, or he would get mad," said Christina. "It just didn't make any sense, so I started investigating on my own." To do that, Christina felt she needed to connect with her long-lost family members on her mother's side to get some answers. While she was scrolling through Facebook as a teenager, Christina's mother's name popped up as a someone you may know alert. It turned out to be a Facebook profile Melissa's family had created as a way to share information about her case. It wasn't long before she reached out to Melissa's family members. Christina was 18 years old when she got in contact with her mother's family and was able to reunite with her aunt Tina and Melissa's mother, who she lovingly calls Gran. "I had so many questions," she stated, "and my own theories about what happened. Turns out theirs were the same as mine." From the moment they reunited, Christina said she felt an instant bond to her Gran and her aunt. They've been inseparable ever since as they work together to get justice for Melissa. "It's just another piece of the puzzle," Christina said, "and it's another step closer to solving my mom's case." During the investigation, police learned early in the investigation that Melissa hadn't been in contact with her husband since December 1998. In 2000, Wolfenbarger allegedly told police that he had seen Melissa walking down the street in March or April of 1999. Christopher was arrested on Tuesday, August 6, 2024, and charged with murder. He is currently in custody in Fulton County Jail. During the press conference, Police did not say what led them to arrest Christopher, citing the integrity of the investigation. Detective Julianne Shepard said during the press conference that after he took over the investigation in 2021, witnesses were re-interviewed and evidence was re-examined, but he declined to single out a specific piece of evidence. The detective also noted that Christopher was considered a person of interest from the beginning. Shepard said he did not know the specific motive, but said he believed the case was domestic violence related. Christopher was found hiding behind a dryer in his home when he was arrested, according to Shepard. Melissa's mother and sister appeared alongside police during the announcement and spoke to reporters. "Finally, hopefully, we can get justice for Melissa," Tina Patton said. Melissa didn't deserve what she got. Tina and Norma said that they never heard from Christopher during the period when Melissa was missing, and the subsequent years after her remains were identified. Norma said that in the summer of 1998, Melissa had briefly moved in with her before going back to Christopher that same year. "She loved her kids, and there's no way on this earth that she would leave them," Norma said. "That's why she went back to him. That's why she kept going back to him." What started out as a long-awaited camping trip in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park turned to horror when two women were brutally murdered on May 24, 1996. A week later, on June 1, 1996, after an extensive search, the bodies of Julianne Julie Williams, 24, and Laura Lolly Winans, 26, were found bound and gagged with their throats slit at their campsite near the Skyland Resort, just off the Appalachian Trail. Nearly 3 decades after the two women were found dead, their killer, a serial rapist who died in prison in 2018, was identified through forensic tests, the FBI said Thursday, June 20th. DNA tests determined that Walter Leo Jackson Sr. killed Laura Winans and Julianne Williams at Shenandoah National Park in May 1996. The FBI's Richmond Field Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Virginia said Thursday in a joint statement. "After 28 years, we are now able to say who committed the brutal murders," U.S. Attorney Christopher Kavanaugh said in a statement. "I want to again extend my condolences to the Winans and Williams families, and hope today's announcement provides some small measure of solace." Winans and Williams loved spending time outdoors and were excited about their trip. The two left for their camping trip to Shenandoah National Park on May 19, 1996, and were planning on returning by May 28, 1996. When they failed to return home as planned, their family members called the National Park Service, which sent rangers to scour the park for the women, locating their brutalized bodies at their campsite. They had been killed at their campsite near the Skyland Resort. For years, the case went cold. But in 2021, a new FBI Richmond investigative team was assigned to review the case. Special agents, intelligence analysts, and other FBI personnel reevaluated hundreds of leads and interviews, the FBI said. The team prioritized evidence from the crime scene and had it retested by an accredited private lab. The private lab collected DNA from several items of evidence, and with the help of Virginia State Police, the DNA profile was sent to the FBI's combined DNA index system. That led to a positive match to Jackson, a convicted serial rapist from Cleveland. The FBI also compared evidence from the slayings of Winans and Williams to a buccal swab containing Jackson's DNA. Those results confirmed we had the right man and finally could tell the victims' families we know who is responsible for this heinous crime, said Stanley Meter, the special agent in charge of the FBI in Richmond. Jackson, who was a painter, was an avid hiker who was known to visit Shenandoah National Park. He died in prison in March 2018 in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, at age 70. Jackson's criminal rap sheet included kidnapping, rapes, and assaults, the FBI said, noting that it also worked with Cleveland Police and Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office on the case. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to stay tuned with the latest uploads.